Hey guys, it's Edwin here, and today I'm going to talk about the concept of the protective self and how it keeps you stuck with toxic relationship patterns in your life. The concept of the protective self is more of a psychoanalytic theory that describes that a part of your personality acts as a barrier between you and the external world. And this barrier actually protects the person's authentic self and their inner feelings, thoughts, and experiences. I'm going to be pulling most of these concepts from a book called Whole Again by Jackson Mackenzie, which I'd highly recommend if you are moving on after an abusive past or after a traumatic past. So, the protective self allows an individual to navigate the world safely while maintaining this sense of stability and security. So, it's more like it's allowing you to live life in with an illusionary false or a false sense of stability and security. So, but if that protective self becomes too strong or rigid, like numbing your emotions, it can prevent you from fully experiencing life, and it will limit your growth and development. So, it's protecting you at the same time limiting you from growing. And I'm going to explore it much further in this video. When a trusted loved one, like a parent or a partner, betrays you or mistreats you or rejects you, your true self forms this protective self as a way to cope with the negative experience, especially when you don't have the necessary inner resources or emotional tools to process those painful emotions in the present moment. Like when we are young, we don't have these inner resources to process our emotions. We rely on our caregivers. So this can also happen when we encounter any strong negative experience like trauma, which really changes our perspective on how we view things or how we view life in general. So the protective self perceives itself as separate from others and become more of an observer of the outside world instead of an active participant. So this protective self or your ego or your current perspective will always seek external validation as a way to prove its worthiness or to fill a void which it can't express. And the protective self is also being constantly driven by control and can be difficult to recognize because it's become so natural to the point where we think that it's just who we are. For example, it may convince you that a people pleaser is just your true identity and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, there's nothing wrong with making other people happy, right? Especially those close to you. And then there's no need to change a thing. Like, as long as I make my family, my partner happy, I'm okay, even if it's hurting me. So it's just feeding us with this illusion that the solution to our problems is outside of us. Like, making other people happy will keep us happy, and we just have to keep looking and looking. And since our inner being has been ruined by past experiences or by past traumatic experiences, our protective self will keep itself alive through external measures of worth like money, relationships, obsession, accomplishment, blame, saving others, wanting to be saved, or just anything outside of on the outside world which will give it meaning or a sense of breath. So outside world is keeping it alive, and it will keep looking for something it will never get. So when we are in this state like people pleasing, it will keep us stuck because we'll be seeking for something which we will never find or that can never really fill that void. In short, like the protective self is really blocking, or you can call it protecting in quotes, protecting us from experiencing the wounded feelings that needs to be heard, processed, released, and healed. And the more we live life with this protective self and without really being aware of it, the more our actions and behaviors will give it more evidence as just our true identity. So, our life circumstances will really feed the protective self, and the wound that needs healing will become more and more obscure and more invisible. Let me give you a brief analogy that will help you understand why the protective self is keeping us stuck. So, I want you to imagine that you are a miner who's looking for gold. But instead of digging and removing the soil till you find the ore, the gold ore, you add more soil on the gold mine. Of course, it will make it harder for you to find the gold, and you'll even never find it because you are adding soil on the gold mine. Actually, this is why you might try a couple of traditional self-help techniques like affirmations, meditation, or working out, but you're not really getting anywhere because the protective self has really shielded our bodies or our minds from feeling the parts of ourselves that actually need healing. It's more like throwing a grenade to a force field. Like if you're a sci-fi fan, imagine throwing a grenade to a force field. Of course, it will bounce back, and we can only hit that target once we lower the force field. So we can only hit the target once we lower the shields. But without lowering the shields, we'll never hit the target. The bomb will just be bouncing back. So you are throwing in a positive affirmation, but the next day you are still feeling the same way, or even way worse, because now you're even saying that you're a failure because the affirmations are not working. So you just keep throwing in, and it's not working. You keep trying like new adventures, like new relationships, new ventures, a new business idea, but they give you this brief high compulsion, of course, but it's still deeply unfulfilling. So without proper understanding of the protective self, you might fall into its trap of thinking that we've really healed on a deep level, yet all the time our healing modality is just feeding the protective self and not really shining the light on the wounded parts deep within ourselves so that they can fully heal. Means any attempt to heal or transform a false conclusion must be from a place of truth and not the perspective of the false self. Like if you go to a hospital and then let's say you are misdiagnosed with malaria or something, and then the actual problem was actually, let's say, a cold, it will mean that the cold will never really go away, and then because the drugs will be given will be for malaria. Hope that makes sense. So the false self is a constructed identity that is based on false beliefs and premises, and these false beliefs and premises are because of their past experiences. So if therapy or the spiritual practice is organized by the false identity, it will be based on these false beliefs, and therefore it can only yield a false kind of treatment. So, for true healing and transformation to occur, the individual must be able to identify and challenge their false beliefs and move beyond their false self. It's this proverbial meaning of you cannot heal in the same place which broke you, but now you cannot heal yourself without shifting your identity, the way you identify yourself from the past. Let's explain it using this great fish tank metaphor. Let's imagine sick fish in a filthy fish tank. This filthy is now your protective self. So no amount of introducing new fish, like let it signify jumping into a new relationship or even thinking positive thoughts, will stop the fish from getting sick because the tank is still filthy. Also, moving the filthy tank to a better place, like leaving the relationship, will not stop the fish from getting sick. So the only solution is cleaning that fish tank, cleaning that filthy fish tank, which is signifies like dissolving your false identity or dissolving your false beliefs, your negative beliefs you have about yourself because of past experiences, and then now nurturing it with fresh and clean nutrients. Hope that explains simply. Like a filthy tank is where the problem is, not the fish inside the tank. So, how do we become aware that we are living life from the lens of this protective self? In fact, according to Mackenzie, there are two clearest aspects that can help us distinguish if the protective self or our true self is running our lives. The first one is focus on external things, people to feel whole, complete, or happy. Like, if I just make my partner happy, I will know I am lovable. That's just the protective self. Or if I really find a good woman or a high quality man, my life will be complete. Sounds so familiar, right? It's just looking for something to prove your worth, to prove your value, to prove you're lovable. The second thing is a sense or this irresistible urge to do something. More like you just can't stop yourself from doing it. Like you can't stop yourself from calling them. You can't stop yourself from making others happy, even when it's hurting you. So, those are just similar patterns in life. Like you can't stop yourself from doing it and focus on external things to just feel complete. That's how you can honor the protective self is running your life. So, if you feel that you are repeating similar patterns in life, like getting into relationships where you are the second fiddle, or where you don't matter, or where you are being invalidated, then that's the protective self running your life and not your authentic self. The other thing about those false identities is that it will choose thoughts or life circumstances that reinforce it or make it firm or prove it. So your false identity is always keeping you in this semi-conscious state, setting you up for failure so that it can stay in control. For example, like a codependent will unconsciously find themselves in a relationship with emotionally unavailable people so that the protective self will reinforce or will provide evidence that you are not worthy of love, you're not worthy of happiness, or you need someone else to be happy. Hope that makes sense. That's why to really move forward in life, you really need to work on breaking that barrier, which is preventing you from getting in touch with your true emotions, so that you can stop living in survival mode and start being or living. So, unless you do that, you'll find yourself gravitating to instances which just preserve your current ego or your protective self or your current false identity. And when you become aware of this protective self, at least you can understand why at times you just find yourself self sabotaging or doing something that logically doesn't make sense. Like, of course, the normal one, repeating those patterns or ignoring red flags or being an option to someone who mistreats you. So, show yourself some grace and compassion and understand that the current you is trying to protect you, but in an illusionary kind of way. It's trying to provide you some sense of security and stability, but it's a false kind of insecurity. It's just protecting you from accessing those deep emotions, those dark emotions as a result of past experiences. So unless you really look for get a healing modality which really goes deeper, you'll find yourself just sugarcoating it without really going deeper and freeing yourself from the past. Hope that makes sense, guys. As I said, I pulled most of this concept from a book called Whole Again by Jackson Mackenzie, a great author. So you can go find it and really study it more. But don't let it be your first book if you are really starting your healing journey, because it will be quite triggering and it will really challenge you. It will also challenge the way you view that narcissist, the way you view that abusive partner. So don't start there first. This is for you if you've really started healing and you want to go to the next level. Hope you found that informative, guys. Until next time, see ya.